Well, welcome on this winter night, early winter night, all wrapped up as we all are. And let's jump right into a subject that I think I've discussed before in this year, but it's always topical, particularly the week of Emor. And and um, and there's so many insights and so many um, different interpretations um, that I am sure I will not repeat myself from what has happened in the previous years. I'm not sure. And that's the Sfirat Omer, the counting of the Omer, which we do. So what do? We count days. We say today's day one, today's day two, today's day three, and so forth. Last night was, what did I say, 27. What is the point and what is the purpose, of doing this? I mean, we've all got a calendar. I've got one right here somewhere on my desk. Uh, you know, know when Shavuot is. Um, so what is the purpose of counting days that are going to happen anyway? You count money because you want to know how much you have. And there's a joy in that. Um, so what is there about counting days that the days will be there whether we number them or not? And the answer is actually that it's a Torah commandment. It's a mitzvah which is given to us, and it's in this week's parasha Emor, and that's why I chose the topic. Besides the fact that we're now in the period of the counting of the Omer, as we were discussing earlier, and the verse says that from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, that's the Omer Hatnufa, from that day, and that's Mocharat HaShabbat, the day after the Sabbath. The Sabbath here is a reference not to Saturday, but to Pesach. Okay, it's a festival, so they refer to it as a Sabbath. So on the next day, after the Sabbath, after the Yontiv of Pesach, you bring the Omer Hatnufa, you bring this elevation offering, the Shiva, and then you count 7 weeks. Sheva Shabbatot, Tmimot Tiena. It's going to be 7 weeks that you count. And then the Torah adds, from till the end of the seventh week, you count those 50 days, and then at that point you bring this new offering, Mincha Chadasha LaHashem. That's a reference to the observance of Shavuot that comes at the end of this. So it is the link, it seems, between Pesach and Shavuot. We need to explore that. The way the Torah puts it, you need to count the days in order to be able to observe Shavuot. And this is actually true, that everyone has the obligation of counting days, but our Shavuot happens at the end of those 50 days. Irrespective of the date on the calendar, and that's it's pretty fixed. We always know because our calendar is fixed, and we know that there's always going to be 30 days in Nisan, 29 days in Iyar. So we know exactly that Shavuot is going to be 50th day, 6th and 7th of Sivan, sorry. It's fixed. Except for the following. What happens if you personally miss a day? Not you forget to count one day, but you actually miss a day in your life. How does that happen? That happens if you cross the international date line. And when that happens, then depending on which way you go, you've either got you skip a day or you have a repeat of a day, and that would mean that you would then have your own personal Shavuot at the end of your own personal 50-day count, either a day before the rest of the community or a day after the rest of the community. For which reason, it's very complicated to work out which way is when, how does deadline work. I suppose people who do it frequently work it out, but I have a memory of standing in Honolulu airport and standing there and davening Shachris, and I got to the end of the service and I was going, Hayom Yom Revi'i b'Shabbat, Shlishi b'Shabbat, Chamishi b'Shabbat. I really didn't know which day of the week it was. I knew that it had moved one day or the other. I'm not even go there, but I think if you travel east and you go, towards the west coast, then you lose a day. But if you travel the other way, you skip a day, and that would affect your own personal Shavuot because your observance of Shavuot depends on your own 50 days having elapsed. So that's a function of this counting the Yom on a very practical level, to first of all, determine when Shavuot's going to be, and second of all, to link those two Chagim, Pesach and Shavuot, with that mitzvah of the counting of the days. I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit here. Spoiler alert, and I'm going to share with you what really we're going to end with. And that is that prayer that we say after counting the Omer. Now, I know from being in shuls for many years that most people at that point, just have stopped reading the Torah. But at the end, there's a Ribono Shel Olam. There's a prayer after you've counted the Omer and you've said what the number was, and then there's a psalm that you read, and there's also Ana B'Choach, that beautiful prayer, and then there's a Ribono Shel Olam. I reproduced it here in English. Master of the universe, Ribono Shel Olam, you commanded us through the hands of your servant Moses, right in the Torah, to count the Omer in order to purify us from our evil and defilement. So we're getting suddenly a different dimension here. You wrote in the Torah, you shall count for yourselves from the day after the day of rest, from the day you bring the Omer as a way of offering, 7 complete weeks, be until the day for the 7th week, you count 50 days, and this prayer gives us a bit of an inkling as to what this accomplishes, to cleanse the souls of the people Israel from the impurities. And the prayer continues, maybe you will, Hashem, that in the merit of the Omer counted today, may any defect I've caused be rectified. May I be purified and sanctified with sublime holiness, and thereby may abundant bounty be bestowed upon all the worlds. May it rectify our being, our spirit, our souls from every baseness and defect. May it purify us and sanctify us with sublime holiness, Amen Selah. So clearly, this counting of the Omer is far more than just a technicality. It's something that cleanses our souls and has an effect, a cosmic effect on the entire world. Let's try to understand what that is. And I'd like to begin at the beginning with what we call Pshat, which is the kind of the most simple, not simple, but literal interpretation, and going more into the esoteric, the metaphysical, and eventually get to that idea of the cleansing of the worlds. So the first place we're going to look is in a book called Sefer HaChinuch. Why is this a good place to look? Because Sefer HaChinuch, literally book of education, but he lists all 613 commandments, and that was kind of a popular hobby in his era, because we know there's 613, but how do we define the command and the mitzvah? So there are different people who actually set about making the rules for what's a mitzvah, and then actually listing the 613 according to the Talmud says there's 613 mitzvahs. So now it's a question of determining what qualifies as a mitzvah. What the Sefer HaChinuch does, which is unique, is also gives us a reason for every mitzvah. Besides telling us what the mitzvah entails and how it's practiced, and by whom it's practiced, and where it's practiced, because sometimes mitzvahs are practiced by some sectors of the community, not others, males, females, kohanim, leviim, kings, I don't know. And then also some mitzvot can only be done in some countries. Some mitzvot can only be done at the time of the temple. So he defines that very clearly, but he also gives us the reason for each of these mitzvahs. And this is very interesting here. Sefer HaChinuch, and what is it called? Mitzvah 306. Okay. It is from the roots of the commandment, from the angle of simple understanding. Simple understanding means what we call pshat. Pshat, simple. That since the entire essence of Israel is the Torah, and because the Torah, heavens and the earth was created, etc., It's the essence and the reason that we redeemed and left from Egypt in order to receive the Torah at Sinai and fulfill it. And he quotes here a conversation that took place at the burning bush between Moshe and Hashem. And of course, the burning bush is actually Mount Sinai. It doesn't say so clearly, but it talks about Chorev, and we know Chorev is another name for Mount Sinai. And when Moshe questions what's this exodus that's about to happen, Hashem says the following: "This will be the sign for you I've sent you. When you take out the people from Egypt, you shall worship Hashem on this mountain." The understanding of the verse is that, one line is doubled. Taking them out of Egypt is a sign for you they shall worship God on this mountain, meaning you shall receive the Torah, which is really why they were redeemed. It's a huge thing for them, more than even the redemption from the state of freedom to from slavery to the state of freedom. And so that's the sign that Hashem made, that they were leaving Egypt to receive the Torah. The Jews were aware they were leaving Mitzrayim in order to get the Torah. That was the agenda. And as a result, and we'll see this in a second, they counted the days. They knew it was going to be 50 days, so they counted the days from the time they left Egypt, leading up to getting the Torah. So therefore, we were commanded, so the third line, to tally the more of the holy of Pesach until the day of the giving of the Torah, to show about ourselves the great desire we have for the honor day, which our hearts yearn, like a slave seeks shade, interesting expression, always tally when will come the yearn for time that goes out to freedom, and as a tally of a man that all his deliverance, all of his desires are going to reach at that time. So this is how Sefer HaChinuch explains it. He says it's really, we have Pesach, Festival of Freedom, we have Shavuot, getting the Torah, and we know that it's not just historical. It's not just that we have days that we remember what happened. Days are relived. Energies are reinstated and flow again. So the energy of Pesach is the freedom, and here we're just reading that it's not just physical freedom, but actually freedom in the spiritual sense. And then Shavuot's when God revealed Himself to them. Wow, huge revelation and insight into Hashem and all that's divine. And the days in between are days of expectation. And just as the Jews undoubtedly would have counted the days leading up between Pesach and Shavuot, we are told do the same. If you want to relive that excitement, that anticipation of you coming out of freedom to get to what is the real goal of why you left Egypt, which is to receive Torah and to have that covenant with Hashem, then the way to do that is simply to count. And this is Sefer HaChinuch, that would be pshat. That would be a simple reason. Why do we have to count? Just to relive that experience. Then we get to the Or HaChaim. Or HaChaim was a Sephardi rabbi. His name was Chaim Ben Attar. And we haven't got Susan on with us tonight. Sephardim were always have been more into the Kabbalah, into the deeper mystical understanding of mitzvot rather than just the simple pshat, which is what the Sefer HaChinuch did. So let's have a look at what the Or HaChaim tells us, and he's going to be quoting from the Zohar. Where is he here? Okay. And he says, you shall count for yourselves. The reason the Torah added the words for yourself is that God commanded to count for 7 weeks consecutively. Zohar, here, volume 3, page 97, says the following: the Jewish people were in a state of impurity, and God wanted to betroth them to Himself. So that was Mount Sinai. It's a marriage between Hashem and the Jewish people. God's the groom, we the bride, and we unite. What is the rule? So a menstruating woman has to purify herself to prepare for marriage, and has to go to the mikveh at the conclusion of 7 days. So He commanded them, the Jewish people, to purify themselves for 7 weeks, but counting those days, much as a menstruant counts the 7 days. I've never heard that word menstruant, but anyway, the meaning is obvious. The count then was for the benefit of the Israelites, in order they will become Hashem's bride, as it were, would be able to step under the wedding canopy at Mount Sinai. So just like a bride before going to the mikveh immersing, before she marries and stands under the chuppah, will prepare by having 7 days of preparation and then immersion in the mikveh afterwards. And that's what the Jews did, except that, as he explains here, it wasn't 7 days but 7 weeks. And the reason for that was that they were very impure. So it couldn't happen in just a week, and the process of purifying themselves took 7 weeks rather than just the 7 days. So this is we're taking it at a level, and already the meaning of that prayer we say after the counting is kind of coming to light when we understand that they had to prepare for those 7 weeks, and we do the same, and that's a cleansing, purification, and we come out ready to receive the Torah. We come out purer, more refined, more elevated in that sense. So we went from Pshat all the way to the metaphysical and quoting the Zohar, but there's still something that doesn't make sense. So there's one more missing piece in the puzzle, and then everything is going to start coming together. That is the following. What's this idea of the counting of the Omer? Why the Omer? Like, it just happens to be the day. I mean, the Torah could have just as well said, start counting the second day Pesach and onwards. It happens to be that day is the counting of the Omer. There is a classical question that is, rabbis, love to give shiurim on this one. Why is Shehecheyanu not said for counting the Omer? Any mitzvah that is kind of not all year, but on special occasions, we say Shehecheyanu. We say Shehecheyanu for every yontif. We say Shehecheyanu for, say, Pidyon Haben, for amazing occasions that happen in life cycle, or that happen in the yearly cycle. We say, thank you, Hashem, for having brought us to this time. Why don't we say Shehecheyanu when we count the Omer? And the answer that's given is because no, there is nowadays an element of grief when you count the Omer. Because what are you saying? Today is last night was the 27th day of the Omer, which was, what was that, 5 weeks and whatever. I'm going to do the math now in the middle of the shiur. To the Omer. When we say the word to the Omer, we get sad. We get sad because we realize that, on the second day of Pesach, there wasn't an Omer. Second day of Pesach, we just, I once was on the second day of Pesach in the Sephardi shul, right near my parents' home in Brussels. And that is wonderful ritual of reading through the offering of the Omer from the text. It was very beautifully described, how they brought it, how they cut it, how they offered it. It was the whole thing. It was very moving, but it's just historical. It's just nostalgic, but it doesn't bring out any joy. And therefore, to say Shehecheyanu on something which evokes pain, sorrow, is not appropriate. So we don't say Shehecheyanu when we count the Omer. Talking of life cycle events, I skipped straight to Pidyon Haben. Ashkenazi Jews don't say Shehecheyanu at a bris. Why? Because there's pain. The baby's crying, maybe the mother's crying, maybe the father's trying to suppress his tears. It's not just happy, there's pain. We only say Shehecheyanu when something is completely and totally happy. Counting of the Omer, as soon as you say Hayom Yom Echad La Omer or Ba Omer, depending on the version of your city or your custom, there's a certain sadness to the fact that the Omer is just so we don't say Shehecheyanu. Which reinforces my question: what's the connection between between counting the days and the anticipation of Pesach, of Shavuot, which is the one aspect, and the pure self-purification to get ready for Shavuot, which is the other dimension. What's that got to do with Omer? It's got nothing to do with it. This happens to be, a coincidence of what it is. So why do we, connect it with the yeah. So what is the Omer? As I said, Omer is an offering of barley. And how is that described to us? Usfartem lachem, you shall count for yourselves. Um, what's the connection with the barley? Um, well, here is an insight into what Spartem lachem means. This is a quote from a famous Hasidic word written by the author of the Tanya, Zalman Liadi. It's called Likutei Torah. And he says the following. He says, Sfartem is behirut. Sfartem means shine, like he says, Even Sapir. What's Even Sapir? Sapphire stone. I think I got it in English here. Hebrew word we shall count is usfartem. And there you have the word sapir, like in the gemstone, sapir, brilliance, shining. So svartem, can you see that here? That's the counting. And the sapphire or the shining stone, that's sapir. It's the same root. I mean, the yud is just punctuation. It's samach peresh, which is also found in samach peresh. The process of counting is not just one of counting, but one of purification, which we already saw in the Orach Chaim earlier. What does it mean? Well, in Tanya, there is a lengthy explanation as to the opposing forces that are within us. On the one hand, we have what we call the Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination. We have the Yetzer Hara. We have the evil inclination. And we know that we're forever fighting. Those two forces are fighting for control of our body. But in Tanya, he goes a little bit further by actually saying they're two souls. They're two souls. So a person's body is actually animated by two souls. They have different agendas, and that creates tension. And that creates difficulty when we have dilemmas and choices and challenges that we have to face. But what's interesting is the names that he calls them. He refers to the one as nefesh habehemit, from the word behema. I'm sure everyone here knows what a behema is, right? A behema, so it's an animal. So it's animal soul. And the other one is the divine soul. And Tanya explains to us that we're dealing with this battle, with this fight for control, with this trying to take over and bring us to act according to the whims and the wishes of one or the other soul. Now, here's the interesting thing. When we left Egypt, it was really just the divine soul that was redeemed. Nefesh Elokit, the divine soul, the more elevated soul. Um, the animal soul was too far gone. The Jews had been in Egypt for so long, and in fact, that it describes them as having descended 49 gates of impurity. So that's kind of by the abyss. The 50th gate of impurity is a point of no return. So Hashem saves them just at the very last minute. At that point, there is no way of dealing with an animal soul that is so enmeshed with impurity that has descended so low. So God just grabs the divine souls and pulls them out of Egypt. And that's what happens at Yetziat Mitzrayim, described in the text as the nation escaped. Was it escaped? God just pulled them out, and they ran. But when you pull the nefesh haelokit, the divine soul, then the animal soul, they're riding a tandem. They're on the same bike. So if you pull the one guy, the other guy is going to go as well. So that's what happens. The animal soul was also taken out of Egypt, but not in any way refined, purified, made ready. So it remained in that 49th day, 49th gate, sorry, of impurity. Um, and it had to be now cleansed bit by bit, um, stage by stage, gate by gate, so to speak. And that's why it took 49 days. That was the um, now what is the significance of those 49 days? Um, so the animal soul is mainly emotional, and that's how it controls us. The divine soul, Nefesh Elokit, the superior soul, so to speak, is more intellectual. What happens when intellect and emotions clash? Who normally wins? Who's stronger? So yes, I know in theory that I shouldn't have, a third slice of cheesecake tonight because it's not good, and I'm going to be sick tomorrow, and I'm going to have a stomach ache, and I'm going to step on the scale and be so angry with myself. That's intellect. What does emotion say? That cheesecake is just out of this world. We even use the word in South Africa, it's divine. Almost as an attempt to tempt the divine soul into buying that it's good for it too, but it isn't. And so when intellect and emotion clash, it's very difficult for the intellect to win the fight. When those two neshamas fight over control of us, so you know, uh, if you try and have a tug of war with a bull, who's going to win? Yeah, it's much more powerful, um, and it requires a lot of work to purify. So why am I going there? Because I said to you, an animal soul is mainly emotional. If you know a little bit of mysticism, you've probably heard about the seven emotional attributes of the soul. They're known as, and they may ring familiar with the counting of the Omer, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, and Malchut. Those are the emotional kind of attributes. That's how emotions of a human being manifest themselves. Chesed would be, unbridled loving kindness. Gvura would be absolute restraint and self-control. Tiferet, which actually really means beauty, is a blend. A synthesis of the two, what's beautiful, an amazing painting, like I've seen in some exhibits, that just has a black square in the middle, and some people call that art, but to me, it's a black square. There's no inherent beauty. Um, Take the black square and put a red dot in one corner. Well, now you really got a combination of colors. The beauty isn't a combination. That's the effect. It's a blending. It's an integration of chesed and gvura, of the kindness and the restraint working in tandem together in the best way possible. So, what are we going to do for the next 7 weeks? And we're now on Netzach week this week. For the next 7 weeks, next week is Hod. This week, Netzach. I think it ends tonight because the count is divisible by seven. That's the end of the week, and then the next week begins with Hod. Those are the various attributes of the animal soul that we are refining one by one. Now, what's that going to do with barley? Here's the interesting fact. Um, no, here it is, right? What do humans eat? What do animals eat? Human food is wheat, and that refers to Pesach. When in fact we refrain from eating wheat, that refers to wheat is connected with intellect. Wheat is connected somewhere in the Talmud. It says that children only start talking when you give them solids. And what do we give them? We give them, grain. We give them wheat. That's intellect. Animals eat barley. So if we're going to be refining our animal soul, it is very much connected with that Sfirat, with that offering of the Omer that is brought on that second day of Pesach when we start the process of the 7 weeks. And that's why it's called Sfirat HaOmer, or the counting of the measure of barley. It links up with that offering, but it's more than that. We were living that process of taking animal soul and purifying it, making it ready, making it open, kind of putting it through a mikveh to be able to receive the Torah on Shavuot. And every night after we've counted a sphere, because actually 7 by 7, because each of those 7 midot actually integrates and compounds with another one. So you have, in a particular week of the Sephir, you'll have Chesed of Chesed, you'll have Gvura of Chesed and Tiferet. And you can find it in your city. The art school's got the list, down the left column on the counting on the page, and you go through that process of elevating, purifying your soul. Result, you purify yourself, as I showed you in that prayer earlier on that we say after we count the Omer, and that causes purification in the entire world, because we then get to Shavuot, where a new divine light of Torah shines again. It's not, as I said, historical, but these things are happening every single year all over again. So that's our counting of the Omer, and that's the powerful effect that it has on us. Thank you very much, and have a good night.